Hello, YouTube and Kick Worlds. So I'm doing another live stream about Vancouver. I wasn't expecting that, but there's a news story on CBC that caught my eye that I'd like to comment on. So I'm going to play that now, and then I will give my commentary. It's just a short clip, and then we'll come back to this fine image that I created. Okay, and I'll give my take on what's happened. So let me get that going for you.
Of West Vancouver. Cash is a former BC Solicitor General and the former Chief of Police of West Vancouver Police Department. He joins us tonight from Richmond, BC. Thanks, Cash, for being here. So this incident, we just got that update from police. We heard Sarah there. And there was another update that we got from them as well yesterday on that seemingly random attack where the guy was punched in the head. They now have a suspect in custody. This was in the middle of the morning at 11:30. Should folks in Vancouver be concerned about their safety when you've got two incidents kind of back to back that are very violent in nature?
Well, these incidents occur in a very frequent fashion in particular areas in Vancouver. In the area where this incident took place, there's been murders that take place there. There's been a person that had their hand cut off, all by people that are suffering from some type of psychotic episode, whether it's related to their acute drug addiction or some type of severe mental health issues such as schizophrenia. So there are areas of Vancouver that we have to be very cognizant of. This is an area that is frequented by many people in their daily activities, whether they're going out for dinner, going out for breakfast, going out for a walk, or going to work. This is an urban center, and it's not a down and out area similar to the downtown east side, which should make no difference. However, we need to be cognizant of the areas we're in because these people are occupying these public spaces in a violent fashion.
So are police dealing with an uphill battle right now when it comes to this? And I want to be clear for the audience, we don't know the specifics in terms of this individual suspect and whether or not they faced addiction issues, mental health issues. There's more information that needs to come.
Save on all your gifts now on Amazon.
Out. But in general, right now, do you think police have kind of the deck stacked against them when it comes to policing this downtown area?
Well, they do, and simply throwing more resources from the police at it is not the solution to this particular problem. And I can tell you, in all likelihood, what I described here of what takes place at the street level crime, whether it's someone related to, as I mentioned, drugs or mental health, in all likelihood, this is probably what happened, because what normal person would go into a restaurant at 11:30, steal alcohol, steal a knife, and go across and try and steal cigarettes and threaten to kill people? So in all likelihood, let's let it be known that this is a individual that most likely frequents these public spaces, and he's one of many that are out there causing havoc on our streets.
So what is the message that government needs to take away from this in terms of those additional resources and trying to battle some of the underlying causes for this, the socioeconomic causes for what we are seeing?
Well, whether it's socioeconomic or whether it's related to some type of health issues. Government is very well versed on what has taken place on our streets. They're not as well attuned to what the solutions are to this particular problem. And all they have to do is look around and look at the advantageous that as other societies, other cities have used in trying to have secure care for these people. They need to be removed from public spaces. They need to be in treatment centers. They need to be held in a humane way, not an inhumane way of living on the streets and trying to survive on the streets, especially as we enter a time of the season where it's very cold out there. So let's be very, very upfront here. There's a lot of talk coming from policymakers and government officials. There's very little action. So the community doesn't really feel safe because of their inaction, which leaves these people out on the streets and causes vulnerability to our public.
Let's talk a little bit about the specifics of this investigation and how it will proceed. This independent third party now investigating this because there was an officer drew his gun, or several, and there was a police-involved shooting here. Talk to me a little bit about, once that mechanism is enacted, what the process is moving forward.
Well, the process, there's going to be three agencies that are involved in this at the outset. One is you'll have the major crime section of the Vancouver Police Department that will be looking at the stabbing against the individual and the harm caused to the other individuals, and whether they have a criminal offense, which they most likely do, of robbery. You're also going to have the coroner's department involved in this, simply because you have a death of an individual. And of course, the Independent Investigation Office, which investigates all police-involved incidents where serious harm or death has occurred. And they will look at whether the level of force was appropriate in these circumstances. And of course, the coroner will probably most likely look at some type of inquest to see if we can get to some policy changes to ensure these incidents don't reoccur.
And is that your fear? Do you think that this will reoccur at some point?
Absolutely. Just a couple blocks away, we had a person that was murdered, and another person by the same suspect had their hand cut off by someone that was suffering from a significant mental health issue, mostly related to schizophrenia. And that occurred early in the morning hours, not too far from the location of today's event. You talked about the fact that we had an individual that was shown on video sucker punching someone. Now I find out that he's also responsible for 3 previous incidents of that nature. So there's no signs of this abating, whether the mayor hires 100 mental health workers and 100 police officers. It's simply because the resources, the enforcement agencies, the health issues, they're so overwhelmed because of the people that are out there on the streets, in the public, with this type of problem. And unless we have clear-cut policy changes that make it so that we can create safer streets, we can deal with the urban decay, we can deal with the street-level crime that's caused by these people, we're going to carry on in this fashion. And Travis, you and I are going to be talking about this once again.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope that there are solutions at some point. Cash, appreciate your perspective on this and your expertise tonight. That was Cash Heed. Cash is a former BC Solicitor General and the former Chief of Police of the West Vancouver Police Department, joining us from Richmond, BC.
All right, so, yeah, I mean, I would say that Vancouver is not safe. Definitely not a safe place to be. That's part of the reason why I left a few years ago. I mean, there were quite a few reasons why I left. It wasn't just because I couldn't afford the rents. I mean, it was clear to me that Vancouver was not the place that I had grown up in anymore, and was quite dangerous. These violent acts happen all the time there, and often the people who are the victims are just minding their own business. They have nothing to do with the person that's doing it. They just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Okay? I've had several close calls myself in Vancouver. You definitely have to have your wits about you. You definitely have to be quick on your feet. Luckily I am, because so that you can get yourself away from potential harms quickly, right? Like, I mean, when I'm walking around Vancouver, I don't really I try not to let people get within arm's reach of me, which could be hard on a crowded street, but I mean, I just try not to let them get in arm's reach, because they can do these things, and you won't see it coming. Also waiting for the SkyTrain too. I mean, it doesn't. Lots of incidents happen that don't get reported. People getting pushed in front of into the train tracks of the SkyTrain. That's happened many times where it hasn't been reported by psychotic people. And I remember commenting about this online, actually on CBC, and just how raked over the coals I was for pointing that out. But it is the reality of Vancouver. And, well, what can we say? I mean, he's talking about, so that was Cash Heed. He was the Solicitor General, like top cop of the province, under the BC Liberals for a time, when the BC Liberals were empowered. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of the BC Liberals. That said, I do think that he was one of the better ones. So, I mean, I'm predisposed to actually liking him. I think we need to be careful, though, when we talk about taking away someone's freedom and putting them into a treatment center, whether it be a treatment center or a jail. But restricting somebody's mobility and freedom like that. I mean, Kashid was talking about how to do it in a humane way. It's not humane to have people on the streets. Okay, point taken. But it's not necessarily humane to take away somebody's liberty as well. So there has to be a way to make sure that it is proportionate to the risk. And so, you know, there's been a lot of talk in Canada recently about doing just that, forcing people with drug addiction into treatment against their will. And the BC Premier David Eby, who used to be a strong advocate for street drug users in the Vancouver's downtown east side, as a lawyer, activist lawyer, he would defend them and argue that their civil rights were being violated. That's what he built his name on. He even recently switched position and now says that he supports locking up drug addicts against their will. But in this discourse, I have not really heard much. Like, I just want to say, the vast majority of people who use drugs, including hard drugs, including people with serious addictions to said hard drugs, the vast majority of these people don't act out in this way. Okay? The vast majority of them do not do this. So, the people who are acting like in this manner, you know, punching and stabbing and killing people, cutting off people's hands and all of that, that is not simply a matter of drug addiction that's leading to that. It very well could be that drug addiction is part of the picture with that individual, but it's much more complicated than that. They almost certainly have a very serious mental illness as well. I believe Kashid said that one individual had involved in these crimes, allegedly, had schizophrenia. I don't even know if that person had a drug addiction in that case, but schizophrenia was said in that clip just now was the reason for one person's behavior. So, you know, it's just, but in the recent discussion, political discussion about this, I have not heard that distinction being made. I have heard, let's lock up drug addicts writ large against their will. Okay, but the vast majority of people with drug addiction are not doing this kind of thing. Okay, and so I just think that needs to be pointed out. And also, we don't really need to reinvent the wheel. We don't really need to bring up about a whole new set of policies and laws in order to combat this. We simply need to have the existing laws that are already on the books in Canada enforced. Okay? It's already against the law to steal. It's against the law to cut somebody's hands off. It's against the law to murder and maim and attack people. That is already against the law. Okay? We need those existing laws to be enforced. Whether somebody is a drug addict or not. I mean, if they are acting out in that manner, being violent, does it really matter if the person is addicted or not? Like, if they're being violent like that, that needs to be dealt with. It needs to be stopped. And we already have these laws on the books. So what's going wrong here? Why are these laws not being enforced? Well, I would actually not blame the police. Okay, especially in the case of Vancouver, I would not blame the police, because the Vancouver police, in my experience, are very good at what they do, and they've got a very tough job on their hands with the downtown east side, and they are good at what they do. I've seen them, and in my opinion, they are the best police force in Canada. Like, I've never, other police interactions with other police departments, I mean, it makes that apparent to me, like that's one of the good things about Vancouver, is it does have a good police force. Okay. And they're not afraid to get their hands dirty either. I always think about the case of, there was a psychotic guy on the SkyTrain, and he had a machete and was threatening people on the train with this machete. And he got on this train at Metrotown in Burnaby, which is about the halfway point of the line. And he rode the train all the way to downtown Vancouver. So that's quite a distance of several stops. And there's already a dedicated SkyTrain police force. Those cops did nothing. They did nothing. And they knew it was happening, and they did nothing. They didn't even warn passengers, say, well, you might not want to get on that train. There's a psychotic guy with a machete. No, they did absolutely nothing. But so once the train got into Vancouver, Vancouver police are only operating within the city limits of Vancouver. That is an issue as well. So the Vancouver police are not in Burnaby, where the guy got on the train. Okay, but in Vancouver, once the train got to downtown and the guy was coming off the train at Burrard SkyTrain in downtown Vancouver, that's where the Vancouver police took the guy down and apprehended him, while the SkyTrain police looked on, just watched the whole, they don't want to get their hands dirty. I believe the SkyTrain police get paid more than the Vancouver police as well. So they're basically glorified mall cops, the SkyTrain police. If it's not about checking fares, they don't want to do it. I don't even really know why they exist. But I would not blame the Vancouver police in this instance, or about this problem in general. I think that they're very good. I would say the problem has to do with the courts. The fact is, the police can arrest someone for committing a crime, and they can have all the evidence and prove that that person committed that crime, and then it goes to court, and there's these judges, many judges who are a part of the justice system, will give the offender a slap on the wrist sentence. They give them a very minimal sentence. And so then it becomes a revolving door. Then the person gets released within a short time, and they're back on the street doing more crimes. Police arrest them again. And it's a revolving wheel. It's a revolving door. So until we can get judges who are actually going to give stiff sentences for serious crimes, this problem will continue. And it probably would continue even if you locked up drug addicts in treatment centers against their will, because not everybody who does this is a drug addict, and most drug addicts aren't acting out in this way. It really is a handful of individuals with serious problems, but who just keep getting in this, like I just explained, through this revolving door of a justice system. And it's interesting that it's coming up because wasn't I just talking earlier today about the politicization of the judiciary? Yeah, I was. In the context of the United States, I was talking about that, reading that article, the first thing I saw this morning, that was characterizing anybody who disagrees with Democrat Party in the United States as being a psychopath. No, you want to know what a psychopath is? It's like these people terrorizing people in Vancouver. Those are the real psychopaths, okay, bitch? But no, in that article, it was making the point. It was saying that, you know, one of the alleged psychopathic crimes of Republicans is that they've politicized the judicial system in the United States. Well, no, not just Republicans. Democrats have too. Both sides have politicized it. But how that applies to Canada is, you know, it's more nuanced than that, because I'm not talking about judges who are being appointed by politicians, okay? But the judiciary, we've got these activist judges presiding over cases in Canada because of the universities that they go to. It's because it's been ingrained into them in university. And Canadian universities are absolutely infected with this woke mindset. And I believe to even be a member of the Bar Association in Canada, you have to agree to taking into consideration identity politics in your meting out of justice. This is something that is entrenched in the system. And I would be curious to know about, this is where I'm going to get controversial. I would be curious to know about the race of the alleged offenders in these cases, because another factor to take into consideration is that judges are forced to give those who are found guilty of a violent crime, but if the person who's found guilty happens to be of Native ancestry, then they're supposed to take that into consideration, the judge, and give them a lower sentence than if that offender belonged to another racial category. So that's an example of how it's institutionalized, like, right into the system. But beyond that, even if the person is not Native, whatever race they may be, there are many activist judges who just are predisposed to giving light sentences because I suppose because of the influence that they've had in university. Okay, and so that is a problem. But I mean, I'm afraid that if we start locking up drug addicts writ large, that we're just going to be creating more problems, more headaches, more broken people, more injustice, more harms to people, and it's not going to solve the problem. We just need to get these certain individuals dealt with. Okay? And so get these judges out of the way who just want to give slap on the wrist sentences. I mean, perhaps the answer is mandatory minimum sentences, so that way, for certain crimes, mandatory minimums, so that way that activist judge is restricted. They're not allowed to use discretion and give out a lower sentence. They're going to be forced to give a longer sentence as a mandatory minimum. I would think that would be a good first step, and those mandatory minimum sentences should be in place for all offenders, regardless, like for certain crimes, but all offenders of certain crimes, but regardless of their race. Okay, so no double standards based on race. That's what we need. That is what we need. Okay, that's the main point I wanted to make. I just wanted to say something else, though, since Kashid was there. I believe, I'm pretty sure this is true. One of the reasons why I like Kashid is because he's one of the few people politicians, public figures, who's ever been upfront about the fact that the Vancouver region, Metro Vancouver, really should have an amalgamated police force. So, like I was just explaining a minute ago, the Vancouver police don't deal with anything beyond Vancouver city limits. So, then you got the SkyTrain police, okay? Then you've got there's about over 20 different separate cities, municipalities making up the Vancouver area. Each one of those have their own police forces. So, you're dealing with upwards of 25 different police departments in Metro Vancouver. A region of just over 2 million people has 25 police departments. I mean, that is crazy. That is crazy. And it was found that in the case of Willie Pickton, that horrible nightmare of a case, the pig farmer from Pitt Meadows, which is a distant suburb of Vancouver, still part of Metro Vancouver though, would drive into downtown Vancouver, pick up prostitutes, take them back to the farm, and slaughter them and put them through the pork rendering equipment. That was going on for years, and it was determined that part of the reason, it's not entirely, there's a complicated case here, but part of the reason why that went on as long as it did was because of a lack of communication and a lack of cooperation between the different police departments. Okay, he's crossing over several different municipal boundaries in committing those crimes. And Pitt Meadows would be, I suppose, that would be the RCMP, Pitt Meadows RCMP, and then there's the Vancouver Police Department, and then there's any number of police departments in between. And so these various police departments were not sharing information. And if they had have been sharing that information, it would have been possible to stop Willie Pickton much sooner. Okay, so it was in that context, I believe, coming out of that Cash Heed called a spade and actually said, you know what, we should have an amalgamation of police forces in the Vancouver region. And of course, it entirely makes sense. Okay, I've supported that for a long time. But it's something that never gets off the ground because that also would imply amalgamating the cities. And that's just something that there's just so many forces against doing that. There's so much, there's so much resistance to that kind of change that it's hard to even talk about it. But most politicians and public figures don't talk about it. Cash Heed is one of the ones who did, and so that's why I do respect him. Okay, so that's all I want to say. This image, by the way, that I have up here that I made, Vancouver Best Place on Earth, and then Earth scratched out, Best Place on Meth. So yeah, that is a play on the slogan Best Place on Earth, which was the slogan that Vancouver used during the 2010 Olympics, as people were being thrown out of their homes. The Olympics was such a circus for the benefit of rich elites, not even from Vancouver, but Vancouver taxpayers had to pay for it, and it really was to the detriment of the community, I would say. Little Mountain Housing Project doesn't exist now, in large part because of the Olympics, and Why does Little Mountain not exist? Because it had to be sold off to raise money to build supportive housing for, guess who? Drug addicts. Yeah. And not to rag on drug addicts, I was just defending them. But, this is part of the problem. And, something else I wanted to say about that, though. He mentioned that this crime happened in a well-off area, not the downtown east side. Right, it happened in Yaletown. In downtown, as part of downtown called Yaletown. And I can tell you that area started to become dangerous after several supportive housing for drug addicts buildings got opened up in the south. It's called South Granville, like not south, like the south part of Granville within downtown. So like say between if people know Vancouver, I don't know, from like Drake Street to Smythe Street, in between there. So it's like south of Robson, basically, is what I'm talking about. South of Robson. that area used to be quite safe, and now that stretch of Granville Street is very dangerous, and it's after they opened up these supportive housing for drug addicts, paid for by displacing the 200 families out of Little Mountain. Okay, and so Yaletown is just a few blocks from there. It's not on Granville Street, but it's still in the south part of downtown. It's very near to it, and I believe that is not a coincidence. Okay, but again, not to blame all drug addicts. It's a handful of people who are causing these problems. The majority of drug addicts are not like that. Okay, the majority of them are not. So it's just important to make that distinction. But yeah, how outrageous that, I mean, how offensive really that Vancouver would have a slogan, best place on earth. Basically, it's putting down every other place, saying that it's better than every other city, every other place on the planet. Vancouver is literally better than that. Like, it was so offensive, and that there's so many problems in Vancouver that get papered over. So, I'm not the first person who thought to make a play on words, and instead of calling it best place on earth, they call it best place on meth. There was a guy who used to comment on the internet under that moniker, so I believe that was the person who invented that phrase. But it's a good one. I mean, it is. It's the best place on meth, because you're gonna fucking need meth to deal with everything that's coming at you in that place. And it's easy to find it there too, so that's perfect. Anyways, that's all I have to say for now. Peace out.